Angry correctional officer locked Julie Chrisley in cafeteria. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another video. I hope everyone's having a great day. Before watching the video, please subscribe and like it. Julie Chrisley saw her time behind bars get cut short thanks to a presidential pardon. However, the Chrisley Knows Best star has denied receiving any special treatment during her time in prison. Recently, she shared a haunting incident while in prison, with her family weighing in on the story. Julie Chrisley reportedly faced a shocking moment behind bars when an angry correctional officer allegedly locked her inside the prison cafeteria without explanation. Sources claim the incident unfolded after a disagreement escalated between Julie and the officer, raising serious concerns about inmate treatment and staff conduct at the facility. The Chrisley family has remained tight-lipped, but insiders suggest tensions inside the prison walls have grown in recent weeks, sparking fear among fellow inmates. This latest twist adds another layer to Julie's already difficult incarceration, as questions loom over what really happened and whether the officer will face consequences for their actions. Savannah Chrisley recently hosted her parents Todd and Julie on her podcast. Julie Chrisley and her husband Todd were introduced to audiences through the USA Network reality series, Chrisley Knows Best. In 2022, however, the two were convicted of charges including bank fraud and tax evasion. For her part, Julie was originally sentenced to 7 years behind bars, which she was set to serve at the Federal Medical Center in Lexington, Kentucky. However, this past May saw Julie and Todd receive a presidential pardon. Since then, the Chrisley family has opened up about Todd and Julie's time in prison, including calls for reform. Recently, Julie herself recounted a harrowing incident while on her daughter Savannah's Unlocked podcast. During their conversation, Savannah noted her mother called her about the incident at the Lexington Center. She shared, "I will never forget at the very beginning, you called me, and you were all to pieces because that one CO," referring to a correctional officer. Julie noted the officer was a food service worker and has since retired. Savannah then claimed the officer intentionally targeted her mother. An incident was recounted in which Savannah Chrisley recently delivered one of the most emotional and compelling episodes of her podcast, yet by inviting her parents Todd and Julie Chrisley to join her for a deeply personal and reflective conversation that has since captured the attention of fans and critics alike. It marked not only a reunion of voices, but a symbolic gathering of strength, love, and resilience in the face of unprecedented trials that have tested the Chrisley family to their core. The episode opened with a warm and heartfelt tone, Savannah expressing gratitude and emotion as she introduced her parents, who have both been at the center of public headlines following their widely publicized legal battles. The air was thick with anticipation as listeners waited to hear directly from Todd and Julie, whose voices had been largely absent from the media landscape since the fallout of their convictions. Yet what unfolded was not a discussion filled with bitterness or regret, but rather one brimming with vulnerability, hope, and a fierce commitment to family. Above all, Savannah took the lead as a host with calm authority, navigating the conversation with a blend of daughterly tenderness and professional grace. It was evident from the start that this episode was more than just an interview. It was a space for healing, storytelling, and truth-telling. She opened the floor to her parents with a simple yet powerful invitation to speak from the heart, which Todd accepted with characteristic candor and emotional depth. Todd spoke about the journey that led them to this moment, acknowledging the pain, the shame, and the lessons he continues to uncover each day. He described the challenge of maintaining faith under pressure and the humbling reality of being brought low only to discover the power of surrender and transformation. Julie echoed those sentiments, offering her own reflections on what it means to lose everything only to find what truly matters. Their voices were steady but honest. Their words carried the weight of lived experience and the desire to do better and be better. The dynamic between the three was moving and intimate. Savannah often holding back tears as she listened to her parents speak, not just as the figures who raised her, but as flawed yet determined individuals struggling to find grace in the midst of chaos. It was clear that the love between them has not wavered, but instead deep and forged in the crucible of adversity and sharpened by a collective desire to grow from their past, rather than be defined by it. One of the most powerful themes of the podcast was forgiveness, not just from others, but within the family and of themselves. Todd opened up about the guilt he carries as a father and the longing he feels to make amends and rebuild trust. Julie, too, shared how motherhood has become both her anchor and her North Star, guiding her through long nights of doubt and isolation. Both spoke about how Savannah has stepped up in ways they never imagined, carrying burdens beyond her years, with grace, courage, and an unwavering commitment to keeping their family together. As the conversation unfolded, the trio also touched on topics often left unsaid in public: family struggles, mental health, the burden of public judgment, and the challenge of maintaining one's humanity. In an unforgiving world, Savannah gave her parents the space to be seen and heard beyond headlines and speculation. Instead of defending past choices, they focused on the future, on healing, and on what it means to be a family when everything familiar falls apart. Julie talked about finding light in small moments: a letter from one of her children, a kind word from a stranger, a prayer whispered in the dark. She credited her faith and her family for keeping her spirit alive, even in the darkest hours. Todd described the power of routine, structure, and finding purpose, even behind bars. He shared how writing, prayers, journaling, and meditation have helped him center himself and stay mentally strong. Throughout the episode, Savannah wove her personal reflections into the conversation, offering insight into how the past year has changed her, matured her, and challenged her in ways she never expected. She spoke not as a reality star or influencer, but as a daughter who has had to make impossible choices, endure intense scrutiny, and carry a family legacy on her shoulders with dignity and love. The response to the episode was immediate and overwhelming. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, gratitude, and renewed admiration for a family that has dared to speak honestly about pain, growth, and redemption. The podcast became a symbol of transparency and transformation, proof that behind the tabloid stories lies a family still holding on, still fighting, still believing in one another. As the episode drew to a close, Savannah thanked her parents for their honesty and strength, promising to continue using her platform, not just to tell stories, but to change narratives. She reminded listeners that every family has its battles, and every person has a story worthy of being told with compassion and truth. The podcast was more than a reunion. It was a declaration of resilience and love, a testament to the power of family, and a promise that no matter how broken the world may try to make you, there is always a way forward when you choose to walk it together. During the discussion, it was felt that Julie's experiences were harsher than Todd's. In turn, Julie shared, "He was just a miserable human being, he really was." Her husband Todd also claimed Julie was the only one getting locked up like that, adding that he would have filed a complaint. Todd and Julie also noticed that a variety of inmates tried to befriend prison staff. However, they felt, "They are not your friends, that's for sure." Comparing both of her parents' experiences, Savannah felt her mother endured harsher treatment than her father. Todd agreed, sharing, "I think that's the way that it is for women in general." In particular, it was noted that Julie's prison didn't have air conditioning, while Todd was able to get new AC units installed within a week thanks to a complaint. For her part, Julie mused that this could be because the building she was placed in was older than the one Todd was in. However, she also highlighted her center didn't have the option of getting new AC units since they never had them to begin with. During the discussion that captivated listeners across the country, one powerful truth seemed to rise unmistakably from the voices behind the microphones. Julie Chrisley's experiences have been notably harsher than Todd's, a reality that unfolded slowly and painfully as Savannah Chrisley welcomed both of her parents onto her podcast in an episode brimming with raw emotion, unfiltered truths, and the kind of vulnerable honesty that rarely finds its way into public platforms. It wasn't merely an interview. It was a reckoning, an open door into the emotional layers of a family navigating the shadows of public shame and personal redemption. As Savannah introduced her parents, there was a trembling warmth in her voice, a combination of love admiration, and the strain of carrying the emotional weight of her family's ongoing struggles. With Todd and Julie appearing together in spirit, though separated by distance and circumstance, the conversation slowly peeled away the facade the world thought it knew, revealing a far more painful and personal reality, especially for Julie. From the very beginning, it was clear that while both had endured trauma, isolation, and emotional bruising, the journey for Julie had been marked by a level of severity that even Todd appeared to acknowledge, with a visible shift in tone every time her name came up. Julie spoke softly but with conviction, describing a daily routine stripped of comfort and dignity, where every ounce of energy was spent trying to maintain not only physical well-being but also a flicker of self-worth. Her words weren't angry, they were tired, measured, and full of reflection. She painted a picture not of vengeance or bitterness, but of emotional survival, a woman who once stood as a pillar of Southern charm, now navigating a cold and unforgiving environment where smiles are rare and kindness feels like a distant luxury. Julie's recounting of her experiences made it clear that the burden she bears isn't just legal or institutional, but deeply personal and emotional, one that has reshaped how she sees herself and the world around her. As Julie spoke, Savannah often fell silent, absorbing every word with visible emotion. There were moments when her voice cracked, when her silence spoke volumes, and when her role as a daughter clashed painfully with her role as a podcast host. It was in those pauses, those unspoken acknowledgments, that the audience could feel the gravity of what Julie was sharing. She described instances of emotional neglect, the crushing monotony of confinement, the way silence in a cell echoes differently than in the real world. She reflected on the loneliness that comes not from physical separation, but from the sense of being forgotten, misunderstood, or misjudged. Todd, for his part, showed his support and love throughout the conversation, but even he couldn't mask the difference in their respective experiences. While he maintained his signature sharp wit and emotional strength, his tone softened whenever Julie's hardships came into focus. He acknowledged the pain she had endured with reverence, confessing that even from his position he could feel that she was carrying a heavier emotional burden. He said he prayed daily not only for strength, but for her protection, her spirit, and her peace. He admitted that not being able to protect her or comfort her as he once did was the hardest punishment of all. Savannah guided the conversation with a delicate balance of compassion and curiosity, asking questions that the audience longed to hear answered, but doing so with deep sensitivity. She questioned the disparities in their treatment, the emotional toll it has taken on their marriage, and how they each find ways to cope. Julie admitted that faith has become her lifeline, not in the performative way so often seen in crisis, but in quiet, desperate moments when all she has is prayer and hope. She spoke of journaling, of clinging to the memory of her family, and of the days when she has to will herself not to fall apart. As the conversation deepened, it became increasingly clear that Julie's experience has not only been more severe, but also more isolating. The support she once took for granted now feels distant. The touch of family is now replaced by the sterile presence of routine and order. Her suffering isn't always loud, but it's constant and cutting. Her emotional resilience, however, remained intact, inspiring not only her daughter but countless listeners who saw in her a woman of grace navigating a storm with courage and faith. The podcast ended with tears, laughter, reflection, and a shared longing for healing. Savannah embraced her parents with words and warmth, thanking them for their honesty and courage. She reminded listeners that behind every headline is a human story, and that within every fall is the potential for redemption. The powerful contrast between Julie and Todd's journeys wasn't just a point of discussion, but a call to deeper understanding, a reminder that the prison system doesn't affect all inmates equally, and that the emotional toll on women, especially mothers, can be far more devastating than statistics reveal. This episode of Savannah's podcast wasn't just a family reconnecting through microphones. It was a moment of truth, compassion, and resilience that exposed the harsh realities faced by Julie Chrisley and illuminated a strength that refused to be silenced. Have you been following this story? Did you listen to Todd and Julie Chrisley on Savannah's podcast? Make sure to come back to TV shows Ace for all the latest reality TV and celebrity news. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, America Trends 24, and stay with us.